Hello there. I am so glad that you are here tonight. I'm Kat Hobson. I am the host of Paranormal Experience and Fate Mag Radio. I'm so excited to be part of the Fate Magazine family. And tonight, I get to bring another member on with me. Um, I am just so thrilled every time I get to welcome somebody that I think is a very dear person and good friend. And the guest tonight is his name is John Russell. He has been a working psychic for over 50 years, and I'm going to tell you, he's pretty freaky good too. He is a multiple title author. He is somebody who loves to bring us along for the ride with him. His first book, and when we first met, was Writing with the Ghosts, Angels, and Spirits of the Dead. And when I saw that, I thought, that's interesting because he is a biker dude. Okay. And he is relocated to Florida. He is one of the most, he loves paranormal activity. He loves to get on that bike and ride and find it. And that is what Writing with Ghosts, Angels, and Spirits of the Dead was. And then he's got A Knock in the Attic, True Ghost Stories, and Other Spine Chilling Paranormal Adventures. Again, unbelievable. His new book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, is out. And if you have not gotten it yet, what on earth are you holding back for? It is so good. So, it's something that I think is going to be a big deal for everyone that is interested in furthering their paranormal journey. And of course, he's got a fourth one coming out, and I just saw the graphics for it, and that is Crying Tree and Magic Rock. I think I got that wrong, but we'll ask him. John Russell, come here to me. Hi there.
Kat, how are you doing? It's so good to be back with you. It's been a while since we've talked, and
Yes.
we always have such a marvelous time together. This is our fifth interview now.
I know, right?
Yes, yes, we've been
And
together 5 times now. It's really an honor to be here. Really a thrill to be here. Hello, Lorraine. Thanks for watching.
that would
Uh,
be my travel buddy, Lori.
yeah, there you
But
go. Yeah,
yeah,
so it's always great to be here. Yeah, you got all the book titles right, and
yes,
the newest book, The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, that hopefully will be out in time for Christmas buying and Christmas gift giving. And I'm really thrilled with it. You know, the first two books were all my paranormal experiences
yeah,
and what they taught me and what I tried to pass on to other people, as well as being just entertaining to read, just
they
enjoyable to
are.
read. And then the third book, 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, a buddy of mine said it's enjoyable to read, but it's a textbook. I'm
Hmm.
like, I'm having to study it and I'm really having to pay attention. And I go back and I reread chapters and it's like, wow, this is really something. And then in the fourth book, the one that's coming out now, The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, I return to the storyteller. And of course, all the stories are true. It's nonfiction. They're absolutely true. They all actually happened. And I personally experienced all of them. But I return to the storyteller in this book, and it's all, again, paranormal experiences. There are some little tiny shifts in this book that I think people are really going to enjoy. I keep with the spiritual aspect, the spiritual understanding of the experiences, but I kind of phase shift things and go into territories that people may not be expecting. And for example, the spiritual lessons that we can learn from everyday, ordinary experiences in nature, watching nature, interacting with nature, and what that can teach us. And that can be mind blowingly deep and just mind boggling. And then I have written, there was it may have to be an older reader like us rather than a younger reader to get this. But many years ago, there was an author, Robert Fulghum. He's,
Oh, love him.
yeah,
Yes.
everything I needed to know I learned in kindergarten. And that was, I believe, his debut book, but he wrote several New York Times
Mhm.
bestsellers, wonderful books. And some of the stories that I write in The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock are almost reminiscent of Fulgham style in the sense of the sensitivity and the nostalgia, the yearning, the emotional content that it gives you. So there's going to be, I think in all of my previous books, there's been something for everybody in there. I really do. But in this new book, The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, I think that it's going to cover such a wide spectrum. I think so many people are going to find so many things that are entertaining, that are insightful, that are humorous, that make you cry, that make you think, that make you mad, that make you wonder. So I'm really, really thrilled for this book to come out. It's really exciting.
Well, then you're definitely going to be in the spirit of Fulgham, because I actually, I have a cottage down in Gulf Shores, and I let people stay there some.
Mm-hmm.
And that is his first book is in the library that I keep there for people to have beach reads and stuff like that.
There you
And
go.
I've had to replace that book because
Yeah.
people
Walk off with
get
it.
into, well, because it's the lessons that are in it, and I'm sure I'm going to find this with Crying Tree and Magic Rock as well. The lessons that are in there are so individual.
Yeah.
It may be a completely different experience that we bring to the book.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson we're going to take from it.
Exactly.
And, really and truly, that's a pretty good person to be taken off on.
To emulate, yeah.
He is one of the best positive writers.
Tremendous writer, tremendous author. And the really neat thing about The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, all of my stories are personal. All of them actually happened. I really experienced these things. But with The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, I've kind of gone more in depth into the emotional aspect, my emotional response to the experiences I've had. I also go back to my childhood and write about paranormal experiences that happened to me as a child that I've never before written about or never before talked about. And then there's other stories in there that I've never before talked about, never written about, spoken about, only sparingly in interviews since the book was coming out. So people are going to be reading, brand new things that cover the gamut. I've updated some of the stories in my first two books because it's relevant to update those, because some of the experiences have kind of reactivated. I've experienced a continuation of those things, even right now in present day life. So I've revisited those, so it covers the gamut of things. It goes back to my childhood. It goes back to the first two books, brand new experiences that people have never read before, including updates and things that have happened recently in my life. So I'm really excited about this. And I had an advanced copy I gave to a beta reader, and I got an advanced editorial review on it, and they were giving it raves, and it was a real honor to get my beta reader said, in all honesty, you just keep getting better and better at your craft. And she said, I couldn't put this one down. She said, I got into it. I didn't watch TV. I didn't listen to music. I didn't get on the computer. I didn't get on the phone.
I can see that with.
I was just turning page after page after page. So that's the best compliment you can get as a writer. So I'm really thrilled for this one to hit. And then in 2025, the Cansack Ghost is coming out. So that's another one now that is still in the paranormal storytelling vein. And I've got a lot more planned, a lot more books that are in the works that are going to be coming down the pike in the years to come. And there will be a follow-up to 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities.
I was going to ask if that was going to be coming through.
That's going to be coming through, and it'll be titled 20 More Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities. And it's really kind of funny how that came about, because when I wrote 20 Ways to Increase Your Psychic Abilities, people said, why 20? Why not 10 or 50 or 35 or whatever? And I said,
gotta have a number somewhere.
Gotta have a number somewhere, and 20 is manageable. Mm-hmm. There's enough there that it's going to take you a long time to work through the book, but it's not so much.
It is taking a long time to work through the book.
Well, it does,
And
because it's something you really have to apply and study and understand. I made it simple to do so, but like I said, 20 techniques, that's plentiful. That's a lot.
well, and you have to do the work.
And you have to do the
I
work.
mean,
You
you
have to do
can't just whip through there and like, oh, got it, check. Oh,
yeah,
got it, check.
it's going to happen for me.
So,
No, you got to do it. You got to put it into practice. Exactly right.
yes.
And as I was sitting there, and I had no intention to write a follow up to that, because I said, well, look, it's got enough things in it that, man, you could work with this book the rest of your life, and really
Yeah.
seriously help increase your spirituality and achieve things in life, so on and so forth. And excuse me, got a mustache here there.
That's okay. I have a mini Aussie and a collie now.
Yeah.
And so I always have somebody's hair.
Exactly. But when I was writing all these other books and plotting out all these other books I'm going to write in the future, and just all of a sudden, here it come, and it was like, do 20 more ways. And I was like, 20 ways was enough. And it was like, no, you forgot this. You should mention that. You should teach this. People need to know this. And I was like, oh yeah. So I
Important.
immediately was able to sit down and get the 20 additional techniques, the 20 additional chapters to outline the new book and start writing on it. And it's like, okay, wow. So that's coming about down the road.
You astound me. You
Oh,
really
bless your
do.
heart.
Well, I mean, because when you started this, and oh my gosh, 5, 10 years, well, not 10, but 5 to 7 years ago, you you were just writing and one of the reasons that I so much enjoyed writing with ghost angels and spirits of the dead was because you were writing through parts of my world.
Yeah,
You were sharing these experiences.
exactly.
And
Exactly.
always looking for the paranormal
Yeah.
and always looking for a good ride.
Yep. Absolutely.
And, it spoke to my heart because I knew some of the places that you were stopping.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know if I ever told you that,
Yeah.
but, where you were going was familiar to me.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I was like, I didn't have that experience there.
Yeah.
I should pay attention more. And so, but it did make me get to where now, if I'm being pulled to stop at a particular site, tourist site or whatever, I'm always like, why am I being pulled in here?
Yeah.
This is a little
There's always
unusual.
there's always a reason, and that's one of the things that I wanted to communicate for people to get in my books, was that listen.
Hmm.
And when the other side speaks to you, act on what they're telling you, even if you don't understand it or get it right up front.
Yes.
Obey it, act on it, do it. Because that's like when, in writing with ghost angels and the spirits of the dead, I got this just compulsion to
Yes.
ride to Florida's state capital, Tallahassee. Now, I've been a biker since I was 15. And on this current bike, I had a podcast host point this out to me the other day. They
Right.
said, on your current bike, you've ridden 4.5 times the circumference of the earth. That's how many miles I have been on my current bike. And I got to think,
Wow.
wow, that's pretty neat. Yeah, that's true.
That's
Because
really neat
I have
and really
about
cool.
114,000 miles on just this bike alone. And that's 4.5 times the circumference of the earth. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that's incredible. But anyways, I had, ridden tremendous distance on this bike. I do 500 miles in a day easily. And so it was no big deal to get this urge to ride to Tallahassee. That was an easy ride for me,
Hmm.
there and back in one day. But I didn't understand the compulsion that came with it, the urgency to go. And so I scheduled a day off and got the bike loaded up, got everything checked out, and got everything ready to hit the road. And on the outskirts of Tallahassee, before going in, there was this place called the Tallahassee Automobile Museum. And the psychic bells went off, and it was like, here you go. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. You told me to go into Tallahassee. What's this deal with the Automotive Museum? And they were like, turn in here. This is it. And I was like, this makes no sense. I'm like, okay, whatever.
Only you argue that
I
strongly.
argue with my guys.
You
I
do
argue with my guys.
all the
And,
time.
I'm like, okay, whatever. So I pull in, and it's got a really great vibe. It's a beautiful place. If anybody gets a chance, you've got to go. And so I'm locking up the bike, and these two geese fly by me, long and low. And they go right by me. They're in parallel, and they fly right by me. And it's like, these are the first geese I've seen since I've been in Florida. And it gets me to thinking about when I lived in upstate New York, and I used to watch the geese flying there, and it brought back just so many memories. And I'm like, oh wow! And as I'm walking into the museum, I start thinking about the TV pilot that I shot for the History Channel, and I'm like, why are all these memories flooding back? What is going on here? And one of the things that when I shot the pilot for the TV pilot for the History Channel, it was the search for the assassin, which was we were on the psychic trail of John Wilkes Booth, who had killed Lincoln, and so the whole investigation, from my perspective, that they were filming was what was the psychic residue left behind, and what were you able to tune into at each venue and at each place and at each event, and da 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 da. So one of the things that became a literal obsession with me while we were shooting this thing, while we were filming this thing, was where's the whereabouts of Lincoln's funeral hearse? And nobody knew. And I asked my producer, and he didn't know. And I asked some of the other crew, and they didn't know. And I asked some of the docents in the museums and places that we went. Nobody knew where Lincoln's funeral hearse was. And it was an obsession. I was like, I've got to find Lincoln's hearse, and I've got to stand in front of this thing and get these vibrations. Never mind the Peterson house where he died, and we got to go in there and all that. Never mind that. Where's this damn hearse? And nobody knew, and I couldn't find it. And I was like, oh man. So we moved to Florida from New York, and every now and then this obsession would still come up about this hearse. So I was thinking about that as I'm walking into this museum. So I get in, I pay my entry fee, and I'm looking around the museum, and it's really great. And there's a lot of neat cars and hot rods and things. And I'm like, well, I've had hot rods and I like cars, but I'm a bike guy, what am I doing here? And so I'm looking around on the first floor, and I look over across the room, and I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And I know what it is before I even walk over to it. And I walk over there, and there's the sign, and it says, the funeral hearse that carried Abraham Lincoln. And I'm like, I get chills right now,
Right.
I'm like, oh my God. So the fact that the other side knew where this hearse was, knew that I wanted to find it,
Yeah.
and all these thousands of miles later and years later, they're like, hey, let's send this guy the hearse. Let's let him have this one,
Give him a cheap thrill here.
Yeah, let's give him a cheap thrill. Let's throw this guy a bone. And the fact that they could guide me to that, and it's not a replica hearse. This guy bought the hearse that all Lincoln, and it was like, oh my God. So, the lesson I got from that obviously was there are these intelligences on the other side that they listen to us, they hear us, they see us, they watch us, and when conditions are right, when things are right, they can say, okay, here's what you're seeking, here's what you need, here's where you need to go. And it was just mind blowing. And then after that, for weeks, I would find this abnormal amount of Lincoln pennies everywhere, and Lincoln memorabilia out of the blue, and all this Lincoln stuff just here. It's like, all right, guys, I get it. Yeah, thanks. So
yeah, I'm hearing you.
Yeah, I'm hearing you. So, that was one of the great experiences from that book, was to be able to have that come to fruition. And that's what I wanted people to understand, was that if we will listen, if we will pay attention, even if we don't get it right then, and then there's examples of that in the latest book as well. There was an incident in there, and I'll go ahead and tell this story. It's a short one, and it won't ruin it for people that get the book.
Okay.
There's plenty of other goodies in there. Trust me, it's got a lot of good stuff. But I've had bizarre, weird health issues ever since I was a kid. And I had one doctor tell me one time, he said, John, you don't just get one or two things, you get 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 things, and none of them we know how to treat, none of them we know what to do with, and you get weird stuff.
So, but he's met you, right?
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so he knows.
yeah. And so I've had all these health issues my entire life, and whenever I could, I would do whatever I could to be as healthy as I could. So I lifted weights and I ran, and I played tennis and I practiced martial arts and I did all these things. And because of all these health issues I have, I could never be a contender at anything. Like the fastest mile I ever ran was a 6:24. And if I ran like a 10K race, I might average just under an 8-minute mile. So never a contender. And, but I did it. I enjoyed it, and I did it for my health as much as I could. And so, while I was running distance, I'd run 5 to 10 miles a day when I could, and I got this overwhelming compulsion again, this obsessive urge. Begin wind sprint training, begin interval training. And I'm like, well, this makes absolutely no sense, because I head out the door, warm up at a snail's pace, and then run 5 or 10 miles at around an 8-9 minute pace, basically kind of a jog. And never going to win a race, never going to be a contender. It doesn't make sense to do that, because it's not going to elevate me to any status where I'm going to run any better or win any races. So it doesn't make sense. But the compulsion was so strong that I had to give into it. And I was like, well, okay, whatever. So where we lived at the time was this exceptionally long street. It was about 2 or 3 blocks long and unbroken. So instead of being like a block and then a break, and this thing was like the equivalent of 2 or 3 blocks long without a break, no side streets,
Okay.
no intersections. So I would go out, warm up, and then run as far as I could down the street till I got my heart rate up to 180, 190 beats per minute, and then walk until it went down to about 160, and then do that again till I got my heart rate back up. And that's how you do interval training. And I would do that until I, progressively work up to where I could do more and more and more and more. And so I was like, well, okay, fine and dandy, but I still don't get it. I still don't understand it. And then this bizarre compulsion comes upon me. I mean, a compulsion, an obsession, something I have to do. And it's like, now you're going to go out the door, and as soon as you jump down off your steps and hit the sidewalk, you're going to take off running as fast as you can without a warm up. I was like, this makes no sense whatsoever. This is a good way to injure
Cardio
yourself.
incident waiting to happen, right?
What in God's name? But it's like, this thing is like overwhelming. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I start heading out the door, and boom, just as fast as I can, as soon as I'm out the door. So I do that for a while. And it's like, this makes 0 sense. And so I'm sitting there one bright, sunny Saturday afternoon watching TV, and I've got the door open, just the screen doors closed there. And I'm watching TV, and I'm sitting there on the couch by the door, and I hear this sobbing and this wailing and this yelling coming from outside. And I'm like, what in God's name? And at first I thought I'm hallucinating or it's something on the TV or whatever, but I'm listening to, like, no, it's coming from outside. And I'm like, what in God's name is going on? So I get up and I look out the door, and where we lived, or the street that we lived, we were about half a block from an intersection with a street going the other way, where the short part of the street was, not where I ran up the long way, but going towards the intersection down here. There was a street that intersected, and the speed limit was 40 or 45 miles an hour, and people usually went much faster than that. Mm-hmm. So in the middle of our street, running pell-mell toward that street, that intersection where the cars were going 45, 50 miles an hour, was this toddler screaming and yelling, running down the middle of the street by itself and running right toward that intersection where the cars were going 40, 55 miles an hour. I flew out the door, jumped the steps, hit the ground running full speed, went and grabbed the kid up in the middle of the street, way too close to that intersection, but got it, saved its life, literally. And I was like, my God. And I picked it up and was turning around, walking back toward my house. And here comes this lady walking down the street, or running down the street towards me. and it was her kid. And apparently what had happened was the husband had gone somewhere. The kid wanted to go. He didn't want to take the kid. He left. She wasn't watching. The kid went out, started running down the street thinking that she was going to catch the car, the truck, or whatever, and go with the dad. And the dad was long gone. And she was heading right for that busy intersection as fast as she could run. So if I hadn't have had all that training, and if I hadn't have had that obsession to immediately hit full speed when I went out the front door of my house,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to save her. But because I listened to that compulsion, even though it made absolutely no sense at the time, I was able to save that little girl's life.
Yeah.
So we have to listen, even if it doesn't make sense. If we can't relate to it at the time, there's going to be a reason for it down the road. We may not understand it right then, but we are going to understand it eventually. So always listen, always pay attention. And when you do, obey. Because it doesn't do you any good if you don't obey.
Well, no, it does not.
Yeah.
And, I think all of us have probably had those compulsions in some shape, form, or fashion. And used to, I'm not a psychic. Okay. I don't tell people I'm a psychic. I'm an intuitive
Right.
that leaps the fence every so often,
There you go.
and I'm okay with that
Right.
because when I was younger, my biggest fear was seeing someone in their death state. I did not want that.
Yeah.
And I just said, this is off limits. This is my hard line. Don't show me.
Yeah.
And so that limited a lot of people from wanting to communicate with me, I think.
Yeah.
Because I think I offended a couple of spirits, but I said, I just know me.
Yeah.
There's a reason I'm not in nursing.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I don't do blood. I don't do gore. I have lost people I loved in horrific ways.
Yeah.
I don't want to see this.
Yeah.
And so people generally listen to that.
Right.
But if I'm walking, if I'm at an event, sometimes if I'm just walking down a street in a mall, whatever, I've had people come up to me and say, I need you to help me with something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, who are we talking to? I mean, I look like a little old Southern lady who is just walking through here. I'm not doing anything, and if somebody asks, I don't have a choice.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting because it's not that I run from my gifts.
Yeah.
But I don't advertise that I can help you.
Right. Right.
But
they send people to you that
they
know, that you can help, and that they know they can tell them, talk to this lady, she'll help you.
And that's exactly what happens. And a lot of times, because I have just looked at somebody before and said, why do you think that I'm who you need to talk to?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in this room.
Right.
Why am I who you came up to? Well, because you're who's supposed to help me.
Yep.
How do you argue with that?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You don't.
Exactly. You don't argue. You just do it.
And it's funny because I get twitchy.
Yeah.
If I'm trying not to do it, I get twitchy, and I'm like,
because they're poking you and prodding you, saying, "Hey, Kat, you got to do this. You got to do this. You got to help this person." Yeah.
And I had one. Oh God, this is years ago, but it was like a rude thing that I was supposed to say.
Right.
And I'm like, you are smoking crack. I am not saying this to this woman. No, this was in my doctor's office. Okay. So I went on about my way. And this was the strangest one. This is why this one stays with me. Yeah. Because it was rude. Okay. Yeah. So I come out of the office and, pay my copay, and I'm walking out the door, and she's just sitting there. And I looked at her. I was like, why do you need this reading?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she's like, well, this and this and this, and oh, woe is me, and this and this. And I was like, well, this is not me. Okay. I would never say this to you, but suck it up, Sally. Yeah. You're just going to have to cope with this stuff. Yeah. And then I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Because I am so Southern. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody made me say this.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh
she
yeah.
looked at me and she was thrilled,
Yeah.
thrilled
Yeah.
because it was her grandpa
Yeah.
and he was a truck driver
Yep.
and they
And
named their
plain
trucks.
spoken.
They named their trucks
Yeah.
and Sally was his truck.
There you go.
And he wasn't saying, suck it up, Sally. He was saying, suck it up like Sally.
Yeah.
And he would tell her that all the time.
Yep.
And I was just like, oh my God, I can't
Yeah.
say this out loud.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I'm never going to be, I love that doctor. I was never going to be able to go back. Right. So it was so funny. And, you know, when I'm sitting there looking at your 20 ways to increase your psychic ability, I'm like, nope,
Not for
I'm
me.
good.
I'm
I've got
good.
all I
I'm
want.
good. See,
That's
what's so funny? You mentioned that, like, the gore and blood and the horror and things like that, repulse you. And what's funny with me, the particular niche that the other side put me in,
yeah.
I love horror.
Yep.
There's nothing that scares me. Blood and gore doesn't bother me. I'm an old school old biker, and I've been in places, I've been in bars that cops would be afraid to go in and felt at
Yeah.
home and felt at ease. And the funny thing about it is, um, all of that, the other side pushed me into. That's what I was built for. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what they pushed me into, because there are people and circumstances and situations that I'm the only guy that's going to handle that,
Yep.
because I'm not afraid of it. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't bother me. I'm not afraid to deal with the energies, the spirits, the people, the circumstances, or whatever. And that's been a blessing to me, because to me it feels like, kind of like, okay, John's the end of the rope here, the knot at the end of the rope. This is where you're
Yeah.
going to be able to go and find the answer. This is a guy that's going to tell you how it is. And one of the greatest things, I had two clients who were friends, and they would come to me each separately for a reading, and they gave me the greatest compliment that I could ever have as a psychic, because they said, anytime that we're really down, anytime that we're up against the wall, anytime that the chips are really falling, the chips are really down, we have to know the honest truth. We have to get real guidance. We look at each other and say, where are we going to go? John,
John.
because he's going to tell it like it is. He's not going to sugarcoat it. He's not going to tell us what we want to hear. He's going to tell us the truth, and he's going to help us. He's going to help
Well,
us
you've
figure
done
it
that
out.
to me before,
Yeah.
unsolicited even,
Yeah.
and because the message was there,
Right.
and I was so appreciative of that fact, because I do tend to not really, I don't run from messages,
Yeah.
but I'm uncomfortable because I'm so afraid I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
afraid that I'm putting myself
Right.
into that picture.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that a friend of mine who lives in Milton is another, he can do anything.
Mhm.
He is everything. And he channeled in an investigation that I was on.
Mhm.
And that's something you and I have never talked about.
Right.
But to me, that was the most unusual experience, because he physically, I mean, there were physical manifestation
Yeah.
of changes
Yeah.
that created the appearance of the person that he was channeling.
Right.
And in the course of the conversation, the spirit was upset because he was like, well, I'm not black. And I'm like, that's random. And he was like, no. He said, I don't look anything like the picture in the post office that they put up. I look black. And I'm like, why is your picture in the post office?
Right.
He's like,
Right.
you don't need to know that. Just shut up. I'm like, rude. But yeah, so to me, that was such an interesting thing.
Yeah.
But I would not have wanted to be the channel,
Yeah. Yeah.
because, just because that's not something I'm well versed in.
Yeah.
And I feel like what you're providing is a way to understand all these different roles
It is.
and
Yeah.
abilities. And
And the thing I tell people, there's so much misperception and misunderstanding and misinterpretation of spiritual events
Hmm.
because we're raised to fear the other side.
Yes, we
And
are.
we're raised to religiously condemn the other side. Now,
Yes.
if your religion has paranormal experiences in that religion, that's fine because it condones the
Yeah.
experiences within its own, its own little genre over here. But anything outside
Raised
of that,
Presbyterian.
yeah, yeah,
So,
there you go, there
live
you
in the
go.
Bible Belt,
Yeah,
Southern
there you
Baptist
go.
Belt.
But anything
So,
outside of that, has to be devilish, demonic, evil, satanic, malevolent, or whatever. And
hmm
so we grow up with all of those concepts
hmm
and we carry that into an automatic knee jerk reaction of every spiritual experience we have. So if something happens, we're either afraid of it or we think it's demonic or we think it's satanic or whatever. And it's like people with, I have to explain to people all the time that look, there are not just 6 foot tall, blue eyed, blonde winged angels out there. That's not the sum total of the spiritual realm. There are nature spirits. There are all of these things that we may not even know how to describe or term or whatever, with all these various appearances, personalities, intelligences,
hmm
abilities. And people say, "Oh, well, I saw this thing and it looked grotesque and it scared me to death." And I say, "Okay, stop right there. Go look up a lanternfish. A
yes.
lanternfish is this thing
Okay.
that has this protuberance that comes up off its head and hangs over and glows to attract bait fish. And it's got these horrible googly eyes and it's got these horrific teeth and everything.
Yeah,
And it
because they're like great big
yeah, it
teeth.
looks scary as hell. And it's like, it's not malevolent. It's not
Mm-mm.
demonic. It's not satanic. It's just one of the creations that are here on this planet.
It's just a fish that's
It's
looking for
just
food.
a fish that's looking for food. And so we have to understand that when we begin to deal with the spiritual realm, that we're going to encounter a lot of entities, a lot of
Hmm
beings, a lot of spirits. And they're not all going to be that blonde, blue-eyed angel that we're hoping to encounter.
Which
Some
is
of
usually not a blue-eyed blonde angel.
exactly. And some of them may have an off-putting appearance, or they may make a manifestation that we initially misinterpret as something, oh, that's dangerous or evil or whatever, and it's not. It's just the way they communicate. And
Yes.
the more that you throw yourself into serious investigation, which I've done paranormal investigation since I was 11. I'm 70 now, so I've been around the
Yep.
block a few times in this thing. And the more you throw yourself into it, the more serious you get about it, the more open and responsive you are to it, and the more respectful you are to it. The more
hmm
you will learn, the more you understand. And you have to understand, you have to go into this with an attitude of respect. You don't go in cursing the spirits, you don't go in challenging the spirits, you don't go in
Yep.
demanding all these demonstrations and things. You go in with a respectful attitude. And when you do that, with the concept of, okay, I'm going to meet this spirit. This is an
Yes.
intelligent being with emotions, personality, thought, purpose, will, intelligence, just like you'd meet another human being. And if you go in with that concept and go in without the trained bear in the circus attitude, set off the REM pod and it does. Do it again, do it again, do it again. If you get out of that mindset, and if you
Yes.
get into the mindset of, okay, here's a sentient being I'm interacting with. Do you want to talk with me? Is there something you need from me? Is there something that I need from you? Is there something that you need to tell me, that you need a particular bit of your story or your life to be told? Or is there a warning you need to give someone, or a message you need to give someone, or whatever? Enter into this thing as a reasonable, respectful dialogue with another intelligent being. And that's when you're going to really begin to open up and understand what the other side is. And the more that you do that, the more diverse the communications become and the appearances of those that communicate with you become. I've had communications from nature spirits. I've had
Me too.
communications from plants. I've had communications from snakes. I've had communications from,
That's another hard no.
Yes.
I
I've
have.
had communications from stars.
Now
I've
I
had,
get that.
yeah.
I do get that.
So there's all
And
these things. I was riding my motorcycle one time and I turned off on this road. This was way back in a country road here in Florida, and plenty of visibility all around because there's not many houses or anything there. And the side of the road was mowed back, so nothing to obstruct or obscure or anything like that. And as I was slowing down to turn onto this other road, one of my favorite rides here, I always, on a motorcycle and car, don't matter that much, but on a motorcycle, you got to be checking those rear view mirrors all the time
mhm,
because somebody not paying attention is going to make you a hood ornament if you don't.
yeah,
And I always check my mirrors when I'm slowing down, and I always look around me. I'm always the head on a swivel on the bike, always looking around. And I like to look at the scenery, enjoy the scenery anyways. So I'm slowing down to make this turn. I'm looking around. I look over here. There's nothing there. And I look at my rearview mirrors. Nothing's there. There's no traffic around. There's no people around. There's nothing around. And so I make my turn onto this road. And as a habit, I just always look back in the rearview mirror immediately after a turn. And I look back in the rearview mirror, and there's this monolith, this big black monolith about 12, 14 feet tall, standing there on the side of the road from where I just turned, where there was nothing.
wow,
And I look at this thing, my rearview mirror, and I was like, oh my God, holy cow, I got to go back and see this thing. And about this time, there's traffic coming the other way on this road. There's not usually much traffic out there, but there's some traffic coming. And it delays me turning around. By the time I get turned around, it's vanished. And the impression I got from this thing was that it was a being of some type. It was intelligent. And the message that it gave me was, hey, just want you to know we're out here watching you. We see you. We know where you are. We're keeping an eye on you. We're taking care of you. And it was really neat. But if I hadn't had all of the experience that I've had up to that point, and if I had swallowed the Kool-Aid, when I'd
yeah,
seen this thing, I would have went, "Oh my God, there's this big black devil thing out there haunting me, trying to kill me and get me on the road." That would have been my knee-jerk reaction because that's what most people would have done. But because I've had all this experience in life, because I've communicated with all these various intelligences and all these various entities, my first knee-jerk reaction was, "Oh my God, how cool! I got to go back and visit with this thing."
well,
And
I think that would have been mine with something like that.
really,
Um, I
yeah,
do,
yeah,
because I'm a sky watcher and I do get communication.
yeah.
And so for me, that is an easy yes.
Oh, absolutely,
I
absolutely.
I have are there are there aspects of that that give me the willies? There are, but I mean, I've never had anything. The only thing that's bothered me when I was out stargazing was the time a white possum came up behind me while I was laying on the ground. And they sound worse than they are, and they're pretty freaking bad.
They hiss
Right.
and they growl and carry on. Yeah.
So I was just kind of like
Oh, that's
I
funny. That's
levitated.
great.
I
That's great.
levitated. And
Yeah, we have to
because
be worried about physical things more than we do spiritual things.
yes,
It's like,
but and with the snakes, that is my phobia.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
everybody has at least
I
one.
remember. I remember we talked about this before. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
But by the same token, I had somebody that was being unkind to me grab a bag out of my hand and throw it on the ground.
uh-huh.
And I had to retrieve what was there. I
Yeah,
wasn't thinking, I was still upset.
right.
And I reached my hand down, and there was a black snake with
Yeah,
the racing stripes.
right, right.
And it was really busy trying to not be a snake at that moment.
Hmm.
And I'm like, you just do you. I'm
And
just going
I'll
to
do
get this
me.
because my hand is already down there. I'm like,
Right,
I'll
right.
just grab this and I'm going on and namaste. We're
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Bye.
yeah.
And that was the only time I've always thought if that situation ever arose, I would have a heart attack.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
mean, because that obviously I was killed by snake bite in several different lives because it is deep. Okay. So I always thought that if I ever found that situation, that would be the end of me.
Right, right, right.
And it wasn't,
It was
right?
exactly,
It
exactly.
was it was kind of because he had a square head.
Yeah,
So I wasn't, I mean, if he'd been the V, I might have fallen out because he would have
Right,
struck
right.
because I was pretty close. But I think I surprised him as much as he surprised me.
Yeah,
But it was still a matter of, oh, well,
yeah. There's a
I don't know.
really good snake story in The Crying Tree and the Magic
Well,
Rock.
I can't wait to read it
Yeah,
because probably I'll be able to do that.
there's a really good snake story in there, and I was raised like everybody else to fear snakes, and I grew up in West Texas. So in West Texas, you
Oh,
see a
you had the
snake.
ones to fear.
Yeah, well, but you see a snake, you shoot a snake, regardless of whether it's good or bad. It was just the way you were raised, the way you were taught.
Yeah.
So I was taught to fear snakes. And in my latest book, Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, you'll read about this snake experience that changed my perspective of that entirely. And I went on to have pet snakes after that, and to discover that all animals have a degree of intelligence, emotion, sentience, all these
They do
things.
have sentience.
Yeah,
And
and
well, it's
it
like
progressed.
this one was analyzing.
Yeah, oh sure.
I
Well, I
mean, it
went
was
after the experience and the Crying Tree and the Magic Rock. I went in this pet store one day, and this was when I was still living in West Texas, and I went in this pet store, and this guy had I don't know, 3 or 4 foot boa constrictor out. And I was just entranced. I was like, because of the experience I'd had and that I write about in the book. And I went up to the guy and I was like, oh, that's really beautiful. And snakes are really beautiful creatures.
they are.
And he was holding this thing. He goes, do you want to hold her? And I was like, yeah, okay.
No.
And so this little snake, this little 3, 4 foot boa constrictor, fell in love with me, and I fell in love with her.
Oh,
I couldn't afford her, so I couldn't buy her and give her a home. But she fell in love with me, and we were just inseparable. I mean, she wouldn't go back to the guy. She was crawling all over me, rubbing on me, and I would pet her and stroke her. And oh, she was just in hog heaven. I was like, man, this is wild. And he was like, "You want me to take her?" And I said, "No, we're having a good time. We're hanging
yeah.
out here, you know." So
A good
about
thing.
this time, this woman came in the door of the pet store, and my psychic radar immediately went off. It was like, "Oh, this woman's weird. This is somebody you want to stay away from." And the snake immediately went into the strike position when she saw the woman, and like snuggled up to me to protect me, and went into the strike position.
Oh my
And I was like,
goodness.
the snake knows. She knows this woman is nuts. And and so this woman sees us and immediately makes this beeline for us. And I'm like, don't come here, stay back. The snake's gonna bite you. She goes, why? And I said, just stay back. The snake. And by then this snake was like puffing up and like swelling up and getting ready to attack this woman. And so it's like the the intuitive response that this snake had
Amazing.
matched my psychic response exactly, and it was like, wow, this is really incredible. So this leads me into all kinds of forays and books to come. The Cansite Ghost coming out next year, and then other books that I'm writing on. This leads me into this whole examination of the food chain on this planet and how we treat animals and how we look at animals, and it just gets more and more complex, more and more spiritual, more and more things to look at and examine. You think, my God, if I lived to be 1,000 years old, maybe I'd begin to understand it and get it right a little bit.
You'll be a Buddha at 1,000.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, my
So,
Lord. So a lot
which
of
is not a
neat
bad
things
thing.
to come in the books. A lot more neat things to come in the books, and people are going to read these things. They're going to have a lot of fun.
What do you think? What do you think of? There's all this big hoopla right now,
Yes.
and it's actually dying down. They're allowing it to die down, relevant to the yeah, yes, we have craft. Yes, we have remains. Yes, they are
Yeah.
biologic remains.
Yeah.
No, they're not human biologics.
Right.
All of this stuff going on because I
Yep.
know that my radar moves away from the planet.
Yes.
So, what, and you've never written about this that I know of. And I would be so interested in your take on what this is. And is this truly something that we are interacting with? Is this
Yeah.
something that is a learning curve for
Yeah.
us? Is this a society that's coming to interact in a positive way? And why is the government so terrified of this phenomenon that they think that we can't cope with it?
Yeah. It's interesting that you bring that up, because in The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, I devote a chapter to my UFO experiences and to my current insights and evaluation of these events. And then there's experiences further down the road that I'll get into in other books and things, and other evaluations. But, our government, in the little spotty 9-page report they issued several years back, our government admitted that they are physical craft. They're not ours, and they've been picked up on multiple sensors, and they've been validated by multiple eyewitnesses. And when they talk about the eyewitnesses, they're talking primarily of military personnel,
Yes.
pilots, so on and so forth. Okay, so our government acknowledged, yes, they're real. They're not ours. And then through subsequent reports, they've attempted to backpedal slightly while still having to admit the truth, and so on and so forth. Now, Louis Elizondo has come out with his book Imminent, which I've read. It's a wonderful, excellent book. And first, I have to talk about, people. I'm on interviews all the time. I've done over 180 interviews in the past 4 years. And I will look over in the chats and I'll see people go, "Oh, well, I was interested in this. Well, this guy said he was a psychic and then he lost me. There ain't no such thing." And then I see people talk about Louis Elizondo and say, "Oh, well, this guy never worked for the government. He's just a grifter trying to sell books, another con artist trying to make
Yeah,
this."
I know Lou Elizondo. That
Yeah.
is not Lou
So,
Elizondo.
no.
So,
So it's a matter of fact that people in the military and in the government have vouched for Louis Elizondo and
yeah,
said he is who he says he is. He worked these programs. He was the head of these programs. He has this knowledge. So let's lay that to rest. It's a matter of record that people have vouched for him. Okay.
yes,
The other thing is that people say, "Well, he's wanting to write these books, sell books, make more money." Well, if you read his book, he talks about just about virtually being on the verge of bankruptcy because of leaving the government to do this stuff. And yeah, but he's got this best-selling book now. Well, guess what, sports fans? For that $20 book that an author sells, you get about $1.50 royalty.
yeah,
So, enough to buy some fries with a hamburger if you sell enough books. So he's not getting rich off his books. James Patterson is, J.K. Rowling is, but they're selling millions and millions and
yes.
millions and millions and millions and millions of copies. So that $1.50 royalty there, that adds up in that case.
It builds up.
It builds up. But Luis Elizondo is not doing that. Okay. Now, in Luis Elizondo's latest book, Imminent, or his first book, I guess it is, Imminent.
Yeah.
He states, now, mind you, he is still bound by his governmental non-disclosure agreements. He's still bound
Well,
by
he
his top
has a
secret
military oath
clearances,
to this country
military
also.
oath. He's still bound by all his top secret clearances. So, with that in mind, he has said in his book, in no uncertain terms, that the craft are physical, they're real, they're not ours, they're not any other governments. We have retrieved crashed craft that we have retrieved. We have alien bodies that we have retrieved. Now, he says that in no uncertain terms in this book. So there's your disclosure.
Yep.
This is not our government saying it, but this is a government man.
Well, and it's a government agent.
A government agent saying this. So there's our disclosure. And now, one thing that struck me is with all his NDAs, all his top secret clearances, all his security oaths that he can't violate and he won't violate, if he can say this, which is mind-blowing, if he can say this, imagine what he knows that he can't say. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Well, I'm lucky enough that I get to do UFO conferences. I've gotten to cover alien cons as media. I've gotten to do Contacting the Desert. I've gotten to do
Oh, and
UFO
interrupt you.
Conference.
Hold your thought. Hold your thought. Don't lose your thought. But I'll get to the next part of your question after you say that. So, but go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
And I've gotten a chance to talk to all these people. And Lou is friends with my friends. We are not like
Yeah.
in each other's bubble
Bosom buddies.
unless
But
we're at
yeah.
the same event.
Sure.
But it's really interesting because when he came out,
Mm-hmm.
and I would have liked to have talked with Harry Reid before he passed away,
Oh God, yes. Yeah.
because that was a man on a mission.
Oh yeah. Oh,
And so he comes out. You've got all the Skunk Works guys, you've got all the A-Tip guys, you've got all of the TTS you've got all this stuff, To the Stars,
yeah.
you got rock stars, you got rocket scientists, you've got military intelligence, which is kind of a nomenclature, oxymoron. You got
Oxymoron. Yeah. Yeah.
you've got all this stuff, and I get to ask questions of panels,
Yes.
and I've asked one of someone, and I just literally said, you work for the government, and now you're doing this,
Mm-hmm.
and do you still draw a check from both? Yes. Well, are you disinformation or disclosure?
Right.
Because I think that's a valid question of anybody that comes in from the cold, right?
Absolutely.
And that person bowed up so much that, and they're very blonde, so they don't hide emotion very well. And I was just like, oh my God, they're going to explode.
Yeah.
I'm going to get messy. This is going to be gross. But in real time, they were just adamant I would never violate my oath to my country.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, I'm going to just tell you that for everybody who serves this nation, and I don't care if you never get past being on KP duty, or if you are in any kind of, risk factor position,
Yeah.
or if you just gave your life to this country for your career, whatever, I appreciate all of you.
Absolutely.
And I would absolutely never ask someone to violate an oath.
Right.
But if that's going to violate an oath, then I think we have the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
And so thank you very much. I did not mean to put you on such a spot.
Right.
And that person still won't talk to me, but that's okay.
I hear you. It's
okay, because I don't know if he knows how much and it wasn't Lou, but I don't know if he knows how much I absolutely do respect him. Right. Because that was somebody that's freaking genius.
Yeah.
But that, I've always been curious, because I have a girlfriend who is from way up north, and she sees all the northern lights and has all these experiences, and she's outside a lot, and she does things, and she'll discuss some of her experiences with me, because I live urbanly. I've always lived urbanly, with the exception of like 2 years in Georgia. And so I don't see as much, but I'm a sky watcher.
Mm-hmm.
I have hammocks. I have gravity chairs. I am always outside at night.
Right.
And it's really cool what is out there if you're paying attention, even if you have light pollution.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's not just us.
No, it's not just us. And
so,
you were asking like the second part of the thing with my experiences. I've had several UFO experiences, and I write about those in Writing with Ghost Angels and the Spirits of the Dead, some in a knock in the attic, and then in the new book, The Crying Tree and the Magic Rock, I go more in depth about my take on these things now and what's going on. And the mistake that we make, I mean, first we have to acknowledge, okay, they're real. They're here. They've been visiting this planet hundreds of years, maybe thousands of years, whatever. It's documented. They go way back. And I have talked, you have much more access and experience in talking to people in this genre than I do, but I
don't have your skill set.
Well, but I have talked to, one of the finest minds in the UFO research and experiencer categories, and ask them with all of their years of experience, decades and decades and decades, and all the thousands of people they've talked to in their own personal experiences and everything else. A person that I highly respect and highly uh, validate and recommend. And I asked them, I said, what's going on? They said, we don't know. And anybody that tells you that they know, they don't know.
Yeah.
And now, my theory is that somewhere in the bowels of our government and or our military, somebody knows what's going on. Somebody knows why they're here. Somebody knows their
Yeah.
intent. Somebody knows their focus. Somebody knows their purpose. They have to. That's
They
a
do.
given. That has to be. Why the non-disclosure to the public? Um, the first thing that comes to mind is a power play. People keep secrets because they want power. They want control.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing that comes to mind with me. Um, as far as the UFOs experience with them and their motivations and so on and so forth, from my personal experiences, I have been very open and receptive to these experiences and have tried to go beyond that to further communication, some type of contact, some type of information, something with these beings, with these craft, whatever, and it has not been forthcoming.
That's
And
interesting to me.
yeah, and I think that the thing that the mistakes that we make when we begin to examine this phenomenon and experience this phenomenon is that we jump to the assumption that the space brothers are good and they're here to save us. Well, there's no evidence for that.
There is not.
And we also jump to the assumption, well, they're here to kill us and destroy us. Well, there's not any evidence for that. There is
Because we're still here.
Yeah, there is evidence that they do take people, abduct people against their will. That's not good. They do harmful, painful experiments on people against their will. That's
Yes.
not good. So that doesn't indicate a kindness or a charity or a generosity towards mankind. So that's not a good thing. And I go into depth in this in the latest book, and it aggravates me when people say, when people make excuses for these things. They say, well,
Yes.
look, here you are, a human being, and here's a cockroach. Go and explain to this cockroach that you need to do this, that, or whatever. The cockroach doesn't understand you. And they extrapolate that to the aliens being us and we being the cockroaches. Now, this is so faulty an argument. This is so full of holes because here is a species, us, that all these years later are still using a gasoline combustion engine to get around in, okay? So you could make a point there that, well, we haven't advanced all that far technologically, but yet you can go and get a Samsung phone advertised on TV.
Yes.
And I can go to China, not speaking a word of Mandarin, not knowing a word of Mandarin, and I can open up this phone and go, hey, we eat this here in the United States. Is it similar here? And it translates it into Mandarin. And then in Mandarin, they can speak back to me. No, it's a little different here because da-da-da-da-da. Would you like it? Yes, I would love to try it. And we can have a real-time two-way conversation. Now, folks, if the aliens that can travel faster than light speed through space, bend space and time, do all these things, and you're telling me they're not smart enough to figure out a way to communicate with us? That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. Come on.
I think it has to be conscious choice. Yes.
We're using gasoline combustion engines, and we've invented devices that communicate with anybody on the planet. So that argument doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
Another thing that aggravates me is people say, well, there's the prime directive. They're bound not to interfere. The prime directive comes from Star Trek. It's a TV show. It's a movie. It's science fiction. There's no prime directive in the universe. There's no prime directive on Earth. You're listening to things that are made up by people that have followed Star Trek. Come on, people. There's no prime directive.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I think John Roddenberry was getting downloads.
I know, right?
I do.
I know. Another thing, if there were a prime directive, the prime directive basically states that there's an alien.
His name is Al, and he
Hi,
is there
Al.
every week. And my husband contributed him to my office decor.
There you go.
And one of my friends, who's an astronomer, said, "You're never going to be taken seriously with that alien behind you." I was like, "It's my office. Shut up."
There you go. Shut up. But if there
He's a very
were,
scientist guy, though.
yeah, if there were a prime directive, the prime directive basically states that a superior intelligence shall not interact with an inferior intelligence or society or whatever and introduce things or interact with it in a way that would disrupt things or whatever. Okay, now here we are on Earth. Earth is a very difficult place to live. If you open your eyes, Earth is a very difficult place to live.
Yes.
Oh, we have symphonies and we have love and we have Hallmark cards and we have feel good movies. Yeah, that distracts us from the venomous snakes, the earthquakes, the tornadoes, the hurricanes, the tsunamis, the famines, the plagues, on and on and on and on and on. Earth is a very, very difficult place to live. If some advanced society comes and lands and says, this is going to disrupt your paradigm, but hey, all those kids dying of cancer in St. Jude, we can work with your scientists to cure every single one of them. You want it? Hell yes, I want it.
Yeah.
If they come and say, hey, we're way superior here. We have way more knowledge than you do here. This is going to disrupt your paradigm. But all that nuclear waste that you've been piling up on Earth and some of these areas of your planet that will be radioactive for 10,000 years, want to know how to fix that? Yes, please disturb my paradigm. Yes, please solve this.
Yes.
Yes, please shake up my world. So, that argument doesn't hold water.
Yeah.
So we have to look at things in a practical sense, a logical sense. We have to go into this going, hey, even as experiencers, I'm an experiencer. Even as that, we don't know. We're not given enough information. We're not given enough good contact. We're not given enough workable things in the real world to help us out. And I saw one of the top MUFON investigators interviewed, and he said, look, where are the stories of I was lost in the woods at night, this UFO came over, shone this beam of light down, and led me out of the woods to safety? Where's that story? We don't have those.
We do
We
not.
we have cattle mutilations. We have abductions. We have horrific experiments. We have people traumatized. We have people with nightmares. We have people with radiation poisoning, radiation sickness, radiation burns. We have people with weird implants that move around on their own in their bodies. I wouldn't want that in
And
my
don't
body.
let you take them out.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you heard? I mean, you've talked to some of the same people I have. You've been on with them.
Yeah.
And who have watched someone having one, attempting to have
Try
one
to
removed
remove
that
it,
kept
and
moving.
it's moving on. It's moving on
Yeah.
its own, and it won't let them get it. It's
And
like,
and then
I
you
don't
have
want
people
that in
that,
me.
but then
know?
you have people that do have implants that are very attached to them
Yeah.
and will
Yeah.
not allow
I
them
don't
to
want
move.
it out. It's like that's like Stockholm syndrome.
It is Stockholm syndrome.
You fall in love with your abductor, your captor. It's like it's
Yeah.
craziness. So we have from the civilian side of things, we have a very limited, for all the experience that we've had a very limited knowledge and understanding of what's actually going on. And like I say, from the military, the government side, somebody in there has got to know. I mean, it's ridiculous to think that they couldn't know.
Well, if you go all the way back, to the oh my goodness, which president was that? Eisenhower?
Eisenhower, military industrial complex.
Yeah. And because about the time that this, contract was being discussed or, coming to light or whatever is when we started with our advancement in our capabilities as a
superpower.
Well, it wasn't just us because it was in England.
Yeah.
The initial stuff was in England. And you sit there and you look at that and it's like, well, everybody that has any type of capability now has almost the same types of capabilities.
Right.
So it wasn't any great shakes just to give it to us if that's the way that was going to go, because that's
Sure.
not what happened.
Exactly.
Either that or we have some people that have no concept of what real national security would look like.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, but, and one of the grins of that person is very big in the UFO community now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sit there and I like her. I think she's interesting to talk to
Mm-hmm.
or to listen to.
Yeah.
And I'm never really sure what I think about that. But then again, I feel like, my dad, who was Special Forces Green Beret, jumped out of perfectly good
Right.
airplanes.
Airplanes. Yeah.
The first time I saw my first UFO was with my dad and some of his, unit buddies. We were having a cookout at our house, and I looked
Right.
up, and it probably was like the pill shaped.
Yeah. Tic Tac. Yeah.
And I was in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Okay, so this has been a hot minute. And I'm like, what is that?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, all of them, there were 4 of them, turned around and said, oh, that's a helicopter. I was like, no, it's not. I've watched you jump out of helicopters. I've been watching you jump since I was like 4.
It's swamp gas.
Yeah. And I said, there's no noise. There's no rotors.
Yeah.
That's not a helicopter.
Yep.
Try again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they were just like, and I had an experience that night.
Yeah.
So that's the only real cognitive experience I had of that nature.
Yeah.
But I have wound up in places that I didn't know how I got there before.
Yeah.
So that's disconcerting sometimes.
Oh yeah.
But
I met this lady. I think we may have talked about this before. I'm not sure, but I write about it in my second book, Knock in the Attic.
probably
And
did then.
I had met this. I had gone to Roswell, New Mexico back in 1998. They had Alien Encounter 98, and Stanton Friedman lectured there, and I got to see him. And I was there giving psychic readings. So one morning I got up and I said, well, I've got to go to the UFO museum. I can't be here and not go to the UFO museum.
No doubt.
I realized I could get there, get in, and get back in time to do my readings and everything, right? So I go to the UFO museum, and it wasn't open yet, so I'm standing out on the sidewalk, loitering around on the sidewalk, looking in the windows and stuff. And not much foot traffic, not many people there. And so there's this lady walking toward me down the sidewalk, down the street. And as she gets near, I looked at her, and she smiled, nodded, and I smiled and nodded. She said, are you waiting for the museum to open? I said, yeah. She said, you've been here before? And I said, no. I said, this is my first time here. And I said, oddly enough, I said, I was born in New Mexico, but I've never lived here. And this is my first time in Roswell, as a matter of fact. And she goes, oh, and she said, what do you do? I said, oh, God, here it comes. I'm a psychic. Oh, my God, get away, or whatever. And so I said, well, what the hell? I said, well, I'm here for Alien Encounter 98. I'm giving psychic readings. I'm a psychic. And she looked at me and she goes, well, you'll believe me then. You'll understand me then. I'm like, okay, well, this is taking an interesting twist.
No doubt.
So she said, when we were kids, me and my brother, we were outside playing, and we saw the UFO fly over and crash. And I said, do what? And she said, we were out in the yard, and we looked up and we saw it. And we know it wasn't a bird, a plane, a Superman, helicopter, a blimp, an airplane. Nothing experimental. We knew it was a UFO, and we could tell from the way it was flying, the way it was going through the air and the way it was wobbling, that it was in trouble, that it had lost its flight capabilities, and we saw it go off over in the distance and crash. And I was like, my God, I'm standing here talking to a Roswell UFO crash witness in the flesh. And I said, my God, have you been interviewed? Have you gone on shows and talked to people? Have you whatever? And she's like, no. And I said, why not? And she said, well, when this happened, now this is several other people have said this as well, and it's mentioned in Luisa's book as well.
Mhm.
She said, when this happened, there were government people, there were military people, and there were people that we didn't know who the hell they were.
Yes.
They came around and knocked on people's doors and said, if you speak about this, you and your family's bones are going to be found out in the desert. In other words, we're going to kill you. You're going to die.
Yeah.
And she said, if you come up against some tough old boy that just ain't afraid of the devil himself, but he's married and got kids, you can threaten him. It ain't going to matter to him, but he doesn't want his family to die, so he's going to keep quiet. He doesn't want his kids dead.
Yeah.
And she said, these people were serious. These were not idle threats. We knew that they meant what they said.
With 100% certainty.
Yeah. And so she said, and that's why, most of us have never spoken. And she went like this up and down the street a couple of times, and she goes, I'm sorry, I've said too much. I've got to go. Nice meeting you, bye. And she almost ran off. So that fear still lingered there from those threats. All those
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Because there was a crash prior to Roswell, Trinity.
Yeah.
And it was the coolest thing. Jacques Vallée reached out to us to do an interview when that book was coming out. He had written with Paola.
Yes.
And so I grabbed the book to read it, and I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
It predated Roswell by a good time frame.
Yeah, I think there were something like 4 crashes in total there.
Yes.
And
this one took out what at the time would have been a comm tower. It was the little wired telephone
right
thing. But there were witnesses who were children.
Yeah.
And there were bodies who were their size.
Yeah.
And one of those children reached out to me, and I didn't know the story. And I was like, well, but he hung out with Stanton. Stanton was a friend of mine. And he hung out with Stanton and Kathleen Martin and some other people. He had pictures with everybody that I knew. So I didn't know if he was a fan guy or what his history was. He didn't share it with me. His grandfather, great-grandfather's name was in that book.
Wow.
Okay? Was one of the 2 children that witnessed the crash, witnessed the bodies, witnessed the alien that was running around in a panic outside the craft because he didn't know what to do.
Oh, geez.
And so all the stuff that Jacques wrote in his book was stuff that this kid's grandfather experienced.
Witnessed, yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like,
incredible.
I did not know that name.
Yeah.
And I wasn't rude to him at all.
Yeah.
I just was curious. Can you tell me about this? I don't understand.
Exactly.
He wanted to talk about Roswell.
Yeah.
But not that Roswell.
Right. Yeah.
And since then, just a wonderful human.
Yeah.
But I did not even know that existed until Jacques had reached out to do that interview.
So many instances that have been kept under wraps or not reported or underreported. And I think that if people did the slightest amount of research, they'd be mind-boggling.
I do research this.
Yeah.
Okay. I do research.
It's so hard to find. Yeah. It's still
and
hard.
For me to
coming up. Yeah.
For me to have missed that was embarrassing.
Well, there's so much out there. There's so much out there.
And they did such a good job of hiding it.
Oh yeah. And for people that say you can't hide something like that, oh yeah, you can. Yeah. I've got a dear friend of mine that I write about in my books, and he was a major in the Air Force. Mm-hmm. He worked for the NSA briefly, or with the NSA briefly. He had top secret national security clearances, and he took things to his grave. And he would come. He never revealed anything to me that he shouldn't.
Right.
But he would come right up on the edge of something and go, "Oh, forget I said that.
Gotta back away.
That's it. That no more." And I would just pump him and pump him and pump him for information, and he'd be like, "Nope, nope,
Nope.
nope, nope, nope." And people take these security clearances absolutely seriously. They take them to their grave.
Well, because they know what's going to happen should they
Oh
let that
yeah,
go.
yeah,
I mean, it's a
horrible,
very serious
horrible, yeah,
consequence.
horrible repercussions.
Yeah.
Yes, horrible circumstances. So but it's really amazingly enough with a lot of these people, more than the fear of the repercussions, it's this sense of patriotism and honor and duty,
Yes.
to their country and to their service and everything, which is admirable. But
Yes.
it sure has made it hell for us trying to figure out what the hell's going on, when we desperately need to know what's going on and
Well,
why.
we
And
do.
yeah,
But that's why these people were in the positions that they held,
yeah,
because they are honorable and
right.
good and um, very proud Americans,
Yes,
very proud humans.
yeah,
Their word matters to them.
exactly, exactly.
And,
And you
you
have to
know,
respect that.
you
That's
do
an
have to
honorable thing,
respect
and you
that.
have to respect that.
Well, that's
But,
like the young man that I offended so much. I was
yeah,
like, I'm not asking you to do that. I would not ask you to do that. I'm sorry
right,
that
right.
the circumstance
But it's
makes
just
that.
like with Lou Elizondo, if there's stuff that you know that you can tell it.
Yeah,
Be forthright with it, be forthcoming with it. And I mean, just what Lou said in his book, and the fact that he has these clearances and this knowledge and this experience and this military service and this stature, man, that's gold. That is
it is
solid
gold.
gold. And the fact that he can at least say that much. And what's interesting with all of these people, like Lou and all these other people, they're pushing for disclosure.
They are.
They want disclosure.
Well,
Uh,
because, you know, the longer, this is what makes me crazy,
mhm.
is that the longer that they put it off, the more mystique that they feed into this,
Yeah,
then, the more they can justify hiding that more.
exactly, exactly.
And I sit there and, you know, I I do get to talk. I'm so fortunate that I do get to talk to people like you. We run into people at conferences and stuff.
Yeah,
And I'm sitting there. I love Skinwalker. All
yeah,
right.
oh yeah,
I have
yeah,
followed Skinwalker since I was in my 20s,
yeah,
and I am
yeah.
old. And so it's just, well, I mean, I am.
Right there with you, right there
Right.
with you.
But the first book I read was written by Ryan Skinner.
Yes, yeah,
And that was back when the family that was actually locking their closets from the inside out,
yeah,
were
yeah.
living there. And it was
The
so
cows
dangerous.
are stacked one on top of each other and
Yeah.
all
I mean,
kinds of
it's just,
weirdisms like that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And so as it's evolved, I followed that evolution.
yes,
And so when this new reiteration of Skinwalker Ranch came out, I was like, okay, this is fascinating. I
yeah,
want to see if because there were anomalous creatures, there were anomalous experiences, there
yes.
were things that,
And still are.
yes,
Still
but
do.
they don't focus on those so much.
Yeah.
It's all radiation, radiation, rocket, rocket, rocket. And
UFOs. Yeah.
yeah, well, UFOs are what are creating the radiation, I feel. You
Probably
know,
some of it.
what
Yeah.
is there is what's creating. And
I wrote to Brandon Fugel. I don't know Brandon personally. I've taken up for him in some chats on some
absolutely.
podcasts. Um, I don't know him personally, but I have written to him and gotten some favorable. He liked my comments or whatever. And I said, look, I said on Skinwalker Ranch, you've got neighborhoods out there, just like we have neighborhoods in our cities.
Hmm.
And there are certain neighborhoods in certain cities you don't go into, unless you're
Right.
equipped to go into those neighborhoods. And I said, just because a neighborhood is unsettling or disconcerting
Hmm.
or whatever does not mean it's cursed, malevolent, demonic, satanic, or evil.
Yes.
It just means you ain't equipped to handle that. And the analogy I give people is I'm an old biker, way back old biker, and I could take you in some bars that cops wouldn't go into.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly at home there. I'm perfectly at ease there. But
Yeah.
if I were to take somebody in there that wasn't prepared for that, oh my God, but
I have
it
been in
would,
some of those bars, not
yeah,
being a biker chick,
yeah.
and I have been very well received because of who I
There
was
you
with.
go. There you go.
Because of
And
who I
so
was with.
it's the same thing here
It
in
is
these spiritual
completely.
dimensions. And I'm like you. The other thing is that, you know, I always, and I told Brandon, I said, send in respected, honest, vetted psychics, mediums, shamans, whatever. This is how you're going to interact with that. Not
Yes.
scientifically, because scientifically you're going to measure it. And you're going to say, yeah, we got something. But what's the something you got? Who is it? What is it?
And
What are
why
you
is
trying
it
to
here? Who put
communicate?
it
Why
here?
is it there? What's its purpose? And so on and so forth. And to do that, you're only going to do that with a psychic. You're only
Yes.
going to get that with a shaman or a medicine man. And it's just like when they got the drummers out there, the Native American
Yes.
drummers, and they
And those
drummed,
are very good shaman.
the mesa lit up, all
Yeah.
these things happened, and then they heard the footsteps in the rocks nearby and where they were at.
Yes. All
That's
of
where you're
it.
going to get your results, and that's what you examine and experiment with and experiment on and go with. So I wish they would. I think what they're trying to do is, because the psychic realm is so full of frauds and because it's been so denigrated over the years, they're trying to get
Yes.
away from that a little bit and go to, okay, when we launch a rocket, a UFO appears, you can see it, we can see it, it's on camera, it's a physical craft, it's there. There's something sciencey we can do. And I think that if they go and say, okay, um, we got a creature crawling out of a portal here, and then it did this, and then it disappeared, people are going to say, ah. So I think they're trying to get some respect there for what they're doing. But at some point, you got to get the creature crawling out of the portal, and you got to get to this and to that and the other. You talk to the people that have been on Skinwalker Ranch forever and a day. That's what they're reporting. We got a
Well,
creature coming out of a
yes.
portal. We've got
Yeah.
a Bigfoot. We've got a werewolf. We've got a this. We've got a that.
Well, they are dog men.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
and the Navajo will tell you
Yes.
that that is a very real and very active aspect to that.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
it's that's where I go. That takes me beyond my skeptic or my judgmental or whatever aspect you want to call it, because that, ignoring that, choosing to avoid that conversation
Yeah.
is what is endangering every serious researcher who is on that ranch.
Exactly. Exactly right. Exactly.
And because they don't go out by themselves.
Yeah.
They won't go out by themselves, which is smart.
Yeah.
But if you are not a shaman and you don't have experience in controlling that kind of
Dealing with
manifestation,
those. Yeah. Yeah.
then you're not going to have a positive outcome.
Exactly. Exactly.
And it can be, that's what gets put down to, you know, wild dogs or
Yeah.
wolves or
Yeah.
whatever. Well, no, that's not really always probably
That's
what that is,
exactly right. Exactly right.
because you
We
won't.
have to understand that we live in a world where the paranormal exists. And
Yes.
it's like a buddy of mine said one time. He was reading my he actually has wrote the forward to my first book, and he said, you know, maybe the paranormal is just normal. We call it paranormal, but it's just
Yes.
a normal state of being on this planet.
Yeah.
And it's true, because I tell people, I say, look, where we're at right now, where you are, where I am, all the listeners, all the viewers, all around us, there are spirits, there are beings, there are energies, there are things going on. We aren't tuned into them. We can't see them with our physical eyes. We can't hear them with our ears, but those frequencies are there.
Yeah.
Those beings and energies and intelligences are there.
And
And
sometimes we stumble into those.
yeah, yeah. And it's just like, it's like, look, it's constantly there. And if we learn to tune into it and tune into it in the proper way, the right way, the respectful way, there's not much that we need to fear, if any.
I would
And
agree with that.
yeah, and we can utilize this information for our well-being, for our benefit, to help ourselves, to help others. Are we going to get all the answers? No. Are some people going to get well and get healed and other people going to die? Yes. Are we going to stumble into circumstances that we just can't fathom the reasons why in spite of all this?
Absolutely.
Yes. But it
So,
doesn't mean that we don't continue to walk in the light that we have and continue to seek more light.
mhm.
And the frustrating thing in all of this, I had my psychic awakening when I was 5 years old,
Yeah.
developed a psychic gift when I was 6, started reading psychic readings professionally when I was 18. I've done that for over 50 years now. I started paranormal investigations at the age of 11. I've studied everything on the planet there is to study religiously, spiritually, philosophically, everything. And the frustrating thing of all this, and I've had way, way, way over 1,000 physical paranormal manifestations I've experienced. Other people have seen it with their own eyes. We've captured it on film. We've captured it on audio. We've captured it on video. And for all of that, it's frustrating because we still don't have the answer. We
Yeah.
still don't have all the things that we need or that we want. And it seems to just be set up that way for whatever reason. And
Yes.
that's our investigation. That's our raison d'etre. That's our cause for being. That's our whole calling, is to say, okay, how much farther through this veil can we penetrate? How much more light can we get? How much more help can we get for ourselves, for humanity, for society, for the world itself? And the things that I think hinder us and keep us from achieving that is we go through these cycles where we get close to the earth, we get close to Mother Nature, we get close to the realm of spirit, and then we get tempted away from it, led away from it,
Distraction. Pay
distracted.
no attention to the man behind the curtain.
Yeah. There's a new technology, there's a new play, there's a new singer, there's a new this, there's a new that. And then we get tired. I mean, the flat tire, and we had to change the tire before we came home. And I was going to meditate, but Taylor Swift concert's on tonight. And, this and this and that. There's all these distractions, all these distractions. And I think that we have to realize that we have to make time to interact with this realm and to get that which we're seeking.
Yes.
And for all the time that I spend with that, because I've dedicated my entire life to it.
You
And for
have.
all the time that I've spent doing that, it's not enough. And I'm faced with my distractions. I get up and I'm sick, or I get up and I got to run this errand, or I got to do this thing, or, I was going to do this, but I've got so many clients today that I can't fit that in, or, I just want to sit and watch TV now and not even think about meditating, but I've got to write on this book if I'm going to get it out and meet the deadline. There's all these things that we have to deal with. And so it makes it hard. It makes it difficult to fit all these things in and connect with that realm. And I think that's one of the things that holds us back, that prevents us from getting all of the information that we need and making the contact that we need. And it's really funny because the more advanced we get, the more we make fun of the things that we need. Because
Yes.
back in the day, the plants talk to you, and the trees talk to you, and the earth talked to you. And then as we evolved, quote unquote, people said, oh, you're an idiot, and you're silly, and you're stupid, and you're superstitious. That doesn't happen. It's just a tree. It's just a rock. It's just a plant. Well, now, as in, I think a little bit in this book, more in the 5th book to come out next year, mainstream science, not psychics,
Yes.
not paranormal researchers, not tree huggers, mainstream science. And I cite this in my book. Mainstream science and mainstream scientists have said trees have memories of their lives.
Yes.
They have memories of the events that have occurred. And they show this as evidence in their rings. When you cut into these rings, there's
Yes.
not just a timeline, there's memories in there of events that have occurred. Now they've discovered a long time ago that trees of the same species will send nourishment to each other and signals to each other through their roots underground. And trees of a different species, they'll send signals to, hey, stay away. Our turf over here. Keep away. Go away. They've discovered now, mainstream scientists have discovered plants talk. Plants communicate. They have a language, a specific complex language, lots of words. And it can be as far as a group of plants in a field 30 feet apart, and a caterpillar starts chewing on a leaf 30 feet away over here, and the plant 30 feet over here knows it, gets the signal and says, hey, start emitting, something to repel this insect. They're coming. Plants communicate, plants have knowledge, plants talk. So mainstream science is now validating what shamans and spiritual leaders and psychics have said for all these years, that the earth is intelligent, plants are intelligent, trees are intelligent, Mother Earth is intelligent. And so what we have to do is get back to that understanding, that concept more. What science is telling us now is a fact, is true, is real. And again, I have citations for all this coming out next year. And what we have to do is understand, hey, the people back then had it right.
Well, they did. And, the Joshua Tree Forest. Okay. The first time that I ever drove through there, and I wasn't in the park, right? But the first time I ever saw the actual connectivity of Joshua trees blew my mind. And
sacred experience.
Yes, it is so religious.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. To me, it's
a
so
sacred
spiritual.
experience. It's a sacred experience.
And they had paved a road between these two growth outcroppings, right? Well, they were so obviously connected.
Yeah.
And they mimicked each other's shape. That it was a cluster, not the individual trees, right?
Right.
And I was just kind of like, well, wow.
Yeah.
And I was by myself. I was driving back from Ocean Wells to Vegas. I'd left David at Hubby daycare for that conference, and so I was going back, and I took Route 66 where I could, and just GPS is great. I was making sure that I didn't get so far off the beaten path that I couldn't find my way back.
Yeah.
And I had never realized that connectivity.
Yeah.
And it was so emotional.
Yes.
Because they were interconnected the way we're supposed to be interconnected.
Exactly.
As a species.
Yeah.
Not just as family units.
Right.
And, now, especially right now, I look at things happening in different places, and my empath side comes up and goes, whoa, ho, ho. No, we're just not gonna face this. And I'm like, you have to face, and you have to acknowledge. And because if you don't call out ugly, ugly grows.
Exactly.
And so that is one of the things that I think is so imperative. And I'm so glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because if you're not working together, you're fighting.
Exactly.
Right now there's not room to be passive.
Yeah.
I don't feel.
Yeah, because we're at a time in this country we're so divided, and what's sad is we're not divided over principle. We're divided over rumor and innuendo.
And personality.
We're divided over things that are stated as facts that are not even facts, that are not even close to the truth. And there are dear friends of mine on Facebook that will repost memes or statements or supposed news stories that are just so far-fetched and ridiculous that all you got to do is look at it and read it and go, oh my God, this is stupid. And they'll repost that and believe it.
Yeah.
And I will go and find several news stories to rebut that and post it. And they go, where did you find that? And I was like, there's this thing called Google.
I looked it up.
Yeah.
I didn't just swallow it whole.
That Donald Trump's daughter is a space alien, there's plenty of sources you can go to and look it up and find out if it's true or not, besides this one supposed correct news source. And, we will swallow anything that's put into our craw. And we have to stop that. And I mean, the people that support one side or the other and then demonize the other side, I understand the basic principle because we want to do what's right. And we want to do what's fair. And we want to do what's good for the country. And we want to do what we think is honorable in the sight of God. The only problem is we got a lot of different gods.
And
We
a lot
got
of different outlooks.
Yeah, we got a lot of different outlooks. We got a lot of different philosophies. And guess what, folks? They aren't all right. And if you start studying this, and here you're going to say, well, John, you just don't know. Well, when I started at age 11, reading every book I could find on the planet,
Yeah.
William James, the varieties of religious experience at the age of 11, and all these other things, reading everything I could find in every religion, every philosophy, everything. I know what I'm talking about. I've been there and I've studied it and I've read it all and I've learned it all and I've looked at it all. And guess what, folks? Most of it don't work. You're holding up this standard and willing to go into battle and send people to death for something that's not even true.
Yeah.
That's not even workable. That's not even real. And we've got to the point that if somebody says, oh, Hillary Clinton has a basement full of children and she's selling them on the black market for sex slaves, you know, John, that's a ridiculous example. No, it's not, because they had Pizzagate. Remember?
That is true. I forgot about Pizzagate.
Pizzagate. They had this pizza store where kids were sold into sexual slavery. And in the news, look it up, Google it. It's in the mainstream news. This guy took his AR-15 or AK-47, whatever it was, and he drove to DC where this pizza place was, and he went in there with his gun while people were sitting in there eating with their kids, having pizza, and he went in to rescue these children that were being sold as sex slaves. And there was this locked closet, and he pointed the gun at him and opened this closet. Okay. And they unlocked the closet and they opened the closet, and there was the janitorial supplies and the cleaning supplies and various things for the restaurant and things. And he was like, where's the children? And said, there are no children, you idiot. Yeah. So people will believe ridiculous things and act on things out of emotion, out of religious fervor, out of, political affiliation. And that's what we got to quit doing. We have to stop it.
I'm, full disclosure, political science major. Okay.
There you go.
I love politics.
Yeah.
I find it fascinating.
Oh, it is.
This is not politics.
No, it's not.
This is identity.
This is
tribalism,
religious tribalism, political tribalism, just crazy nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you're in my day when we were young, and we went to the grocery store, and the National Enquirer was in the tabloid rack along with other things at the checkout. Yeah. We would look at that and we'd go, the Enquirer, oh my God, because it had,
yes,
Gerald Ford, father's alien child was space alien, that was the headline in the National Enquirer. And we went, oh my God, what idiot would believe this? Now,
a lot of them.
Now, the people are going to the store, getting the National Enquirer and going, by God, Donald Trump fathered
space alien.
God. Yeah, space alien.
Yeah.
Now we believe it instead of having the sense to go, what idiocy. Now we're believing it. Now we're acting on it. Now we're, we got problems.
Yeah. It really is such a thing because, like I said, I love that study. I love being a student of different everything, really. I like theologies. I like political theory. I like philosophy.
Absolutely.
I just think that I'm very well read. I read your books, so there's that. And but I like everything.
Yeah.
And
the thing is, people have to understand that you have to allow yourself to listen to everything and to study everything on the path to finding the truth.
Yeah.
Because unless you listen to another viewpoint, another perspective, another side,
yes,
you're going to miss what's necessary to make a valid and truthful decision.
And the only person that you're going to be affecting by not taking the time to do that is yourself.
It's yourself.
Because you're going to be in a tizzy. You're going to be upset. You're going to have other people doing your thinking for you.
Well, that's
And
it.
it's so much fun to research.
Yeah, it is. And
And
you made a valid point there. Other people doing your thinking for you. And that's
yeah,
what's happening to people now. They take someone that's a supposed authority, and whatever they say, they take it as gospel. They take it and
well,
run with
and
it.
the main thing to always remember is to look at who is ostensibly giving that person authority,
Yeah. Yeah.
because no,
And yeah. And
we all put
also,
our pants on one leg at a
that's
time.
it.
We all
And,
have a different
and
level of
also,
education.
what is that person's agenda?
What matters
What
to
is their
them?
what is their life? What is their agenda? What are they getting out of it? What are they practicing? What are they doing?
Yeah.
And you can say, well, John, this and this and this is called sin, and the Bible goes against the Bible. Well, guess what? Bible's a book.
Yeah.
There's a ton of religious books out there, and
And
I'm an ordained,
a
ton of
ton of
different.
different theologies and philosophies.
They say, well, John, you don't know the Bible. Well, I'm an ordained minister, and not the degree mill kind. I went through the grind. I did that thing. I know the Bible inside out, forward and
Yeah.
backward, probably better than you do, because that was what I did. And there are so many discrepancies, so many inconsistencies, so many mistranslations, so many things that if you base condemning another human being on some book that you presume God wrote that's so full of error and so full of inconsistencies, and I can talk about some of those, and that translates to everything. And I remember it was so funny. One of the big arguments for Christianity used to be, we're the only one that has a risen God. Jesus is the only risen Savior. If you research other religions worldwide, there have been several religions
There are
predating
several.
Christianity, by the way, that
Yes.
had risen gods after they died, gods who rose and ascended. So no, that happened before Christianity. Look it up; it's out there. It's real. Um, so we have to understand that. I remember I had a client from India, and he said, John, he said, my religion doesn't work. And I said, I know, no religion does.
Yeah.
And he said, but I can't let go of it. Why? And I said, I'll tell you why. Because whether you're a Buddhist or a Christian or this or that or whatever, I said, you've had ground into you and beaten into you from when you were a child. There's this God, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, whomever. There's
Yeah.
this God. And if you want to get by in this world, if you want to be safe, if you want to be healthy, if you want to have good luck and good fortune, you find out what this God wants and you obey this God, you revere this God, and you worship this God. And if you don't, by God, you're in trouble. You're going to have a horrible life and you're going to be reincarnated as a jackal, or you're going to go to hell, or you're going to go to purgatory or whatever. And this is beaten into us since we're kids. And that makes this powerful, powerful, powerful
Yes.
impact on us that's so hard to overcome. And I
You
explained that to him.
realize you
I explained that to him, and he was like, ah. It's like,
yes.
yeah.
But you realize that we have talked with each other for what, 5 years now?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is our first time to discuss religion or politics, either one.
It is. It
And we
is.
are wide open on both.
Exactly. Exactly.
Phyllis is going to shoot us,
I know.
but
I
but
know.
maybe not. But the main thing is to be, and I think this is okay,
Yeah.
because you
Well,
want,
look, everything
we're,
in our lives goes to a spiritual aspect.
it does.
Politics does. Religion does. Everything does. Everything in our life goes to a spiritual aspect. And
Yes.
I mean, there are people that, and this is well known and it's been well talked about even before Lou published his book. There are people in Congress that said, we don't investigate UFOs. Why? They're demonic. It's evil. It's in the Bible. They're satanic. We don't do that. And
Ezekiel left in one. I mean, you know,
so there's a spiritual perspective to everything, and
yeah,
it's up to us to get the right spiritual perspective. Because if your religion is condemning someone, even to death, based on a political or a philosophical or a religious or a racial or a sexual difference, you got the wrong perspective. You got the wrong religion.
yeah,
You got the wrong outlook. So, the reality of it is that politics, philosophy, religion, all these things enters our daily life on a daily basis, whether we think it does or not. Being
Well,
an
it
artist,
does.
I tell people everything's art. Look at your walls. You've got pictures, you've got paintings, you've got signs, you've got posters, you've got drapery, you've got this. That's art.
Yep.
Look at our clothes. Our clothes are decorated. I'm wearing a shirt with an imprint of my third book on it. That's art.
Yep.
Life is art.
I do not have an imprint, but I do have a pretty necklace. So
Yes,
there you
yes,
go.
and bracelets and bracelets. That's art.
Yeah, that's my own
And so,
statement.
art informs our life. Politics, spirituality, all these things inform our life. And what we have to do is find the truth in that, no matter where it leads us.
And be
And
true to what matters to you.
yeah, and I think that so many people have this knee-jerk fear reaction to the truth, just like they do to the paranormal or to various other things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, well, boy, we're going to open a can of worms here. But since we've done, Phyllis, we love you. God
We
bless
do.
you. Help us. Gay people. I had a friend one time tell me that we were all sitting at a bar drinking. We were talking. Somebody came around to gay people, and gays are going to burn in hell. Why? Because the Bible says so. And
Yes.
I said, let me ask you something. And this guy that said there, by God, I'd see a gay, I'd shoot that some bitch. And I was like, let me ask you something. Let me ask you something in all seriousness. I said, you have a brother. I ain't got no brother. I said, well, let's say you did. I said, let's say you have a brother. You grew up together. You love this brother. This brother, you and him are like this. He gets you. You get him. You have fun together. He's a stand-up human being. He's moral. He's decent. He's intelligent. He's smart. He's wonderful. Y'all turn 18. You got a girlfriend. He don't. He comes to you one day. He said, you know what? He said, I'm gay. That's the same brother that you've loved for 18 years.
Yep.
He's the same stand-up human being. He's the same spiritual person. He's the same loving person that you could always count on to be there. He's the same intelligent being as he always was. Now what you gonna do? Put a bullet in him? And he was like, well, and I was like, no, you don't get out of this argument that easy.
Nope.
You got to face this reality. You got to face this truth. And that's where we get back to what a real spirituality is. Well, John, you just don't know these guys. They're out there converting our children, trying to prey on our children, do this, do that. It's like, no.
They're trying to live their life.
They're trying to live their life, because I have people in my family that are gay. I have people, being an artist and a photographer, I've known a jillion people that are gay.
Well, sure.
And
That's because they're people.
That's because they're people.
I mean,
none of them are grooming our children.
No.
None of them tried to convert me.
I did have a woman try to convert me once, but that did not go well for her. So it was somebody I had known when she was engaged to my husband's best friend, and it was such a shock.
Stop.
And it did not go well for her. So, and not because I don't like her or I don't like what she was into, but just because respect that I'm not.
Yeah.
Right. And that's okay.
But we get into all of these things, and we get into all of this divisiveness, and we stop looking at each other as human beings, and we demonize each other. And the spiritual message for any time, and especially for our time, is that we have to be willing to follow where the truth leads us, regardless of what that truth is or where it takes us.
And you can't hide from it.
And we can't hide from it. We can't deny it. We can't change it. And we have to look at our fellow human beings. I mean, look at the eating cats and dogs thing in the debate. And the woman now has come out that started the rumor initially and said, oh my God, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that. I didn't mean for it to be that way. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand. But no,
then why would you even say it?
Yeah, people are.
Well, in all fairness, there are, the rescue where I just got our new dog.
Yeah.
The lady that does the rescue is really concerned because she's noticed that the younger animals are all disappearing.
Yeah.
in the area where she is, and she's very upset because that's her thing.
Yeah.
So, and
Well,
I'm going to tell you, if
a lot
people,
of people have done dogs for dog fighting, for bait dogs,
they
for
do,
things like
and
that.
I think that's probably
So,
what that is. But
yeah,
if you're noticing that different populations are decreasing, sometimes there's other reasons.
exactly.
Maybe sometimes if you're hungry, what are you going to do? I
Yeah,
mean, that's the, you just can't, you cannot just randomly do stuff
exactly.
and be angry and hate and just because.
Yeah.
But
And we've been taught, and this goes again back to spirituality, back to your spiritual concept of life and your connection with your fellow human being. We've been taught to view others of other countries, other cultures, other races,
yes,
other skin colors as less, and we demonize them and we dehumanize them.
which is the
There are
most
people.
ridiculous
It is,
thing.
yeah. I've heard people that literally say that these people are not human or that they do not have a soul like we do, and so on and so forth. And it's like, and I heard people in the church. This is what really put me off in the church way back when I was an ordained minister. I remember this woman that was, oh, she was so sweet and she was just the light of the church and such a saint. And she
Mm.
was talking about, I grew up in West Texas where we have a large Hispanic population. And she was talking about the Hispanic population. She was like, well, they don't have a soul. Not like we do. They're not going to. Jesus don't care about them. They're not going to go to heaven. They don't have a soul like we do. I was like, are you kidding me?
She
And
she meant that.
she meant that. She totally, completely meant that. And so it's
Hmm.
the struggle that I face with people and discussing religion, philosophy, spirituality, all these things, is that for my entire life, I have plunged myself deeply, deeply, deeply into all of this. And other people haven't. They've looked at the surface. They've taken the surface value of things, or they've taken what somebody said at face value and never bothered to investigate it. And I've
Yes,
delved into this as deep as I could possibly go my entire life. And so that's why I say what I say with assurance, and why I say, folks, look, we got to make some changes here. And it
we
relates
do.
to the paranormal. It relates to the psychic realm. It relates to religion. It relates to philosophy. It relates to spirituality. It relates to our well-being on the planet. And we got to make some changes. We got to open our
We
eyes.
do. And we also have to go because,
Oh, darn!
because
No, I've got more.
we
I've got more.
will you come back?
Absolutely,
I'd love
absolutely. You
a
know I will. You know
conversation.
I will.
I'd love it. Thank you so much. And
Thank
this
you.
is John Russell.
Yes,
He is one of the best authors. He's got a new book, Crying Tree of Magic Rock, coming out. But he
that's
also has 20 ways to increase your psychic abilities.
right. That's available
Go
now.
buy that. Go to
Yeah,
Amazon, buy them all. There's
yeah.
4.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you.
So, just go get them and get in touch with him, and he will probably sign them if you ask him really nice.
There you go.
So, thank you so much, John. I'm
Thank
sorry
you,
we're
Kat.
so,
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. And
I
thank you,
love
everybody,
this.
for watching and listening. God bless.
God bless you too. Thank you. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. We will be back next week, same cat time, same cat channel, and I'll be back on Wednesday with Paranormal Experience. Y'all have a great night and be blessed. Good night.